Hello all. I think I've done 3 on the trot. That's good for me, isn't it? Let's start with the first whiskey file question of the evening. John at Superbike. Now I know this chap. That's a good question. A long floating third gear wheelie on a motorcycle or a long light fingered third gear drift, which is harder to perfect and which would be your favourite? Can we say fingered pre-watershed? I'm not sure. Just did. Right. What a fantastic question. I always crave the other, and I obsess over things I can't do, and I can't do a third gear wheelie on a road bike. Not that you should do on the road anyway, but I'm not that good. I can pop the wheel up and hit the anti-wheelie and then let it come down again, but I can't just sit there in third gear and with the tap open and just go. So I admire anyone that can do it, and it's something I'm going to try and learn to do as soon as this nonsense is over. I'm going to wheelie school. So for me it has to be the wheelie because I can do the other thing and therefore it's almost second nature, and I always love watching people do things that I can't do, like fix computers, cook, hold a sensible conversation, that kind of stuff. So wheelie all day long. Mather Donaldson won something? Arthur Donaldson? The best car you didn't like? That's a good question, boss. The current M5 is one of the most complete road cars I've ever driven, but it just doesn't float my boat. I much prefer the E63. There's something about the E63 that bubbles to the surface when you drive it, whereas the new M5, I'm so disappointed by the fact it doesn't have big wide arches on it, and you don't see that sort of M stance through the camber and toes and the way the wheels sit in the wheel arches from a distance. You know, you see the 39 M5 from 150 yards. You don't need to see the badge, you just see the stance, and you're like, I know that's an M5. The new one, I don't. So I just found the whole thing quite bland. Dan Reed Jazz. C63 Black or M3 CSL. Both future classics. Yes, I agree with that. Which one? Because they're now similar money. The significance of the M3 CSL should not be underestimated, but the gearbox is garbage. The C63 Black is a great car. I'd have that to drive all day long. George Jenks, new RS4 or RS6? Now, this is a good question, because in previous versions, the B7, 8, and 9 versus the C7 or 5, 6, 7, you'd have said the RS6 was the better car. But now, I thought the new RS6, when it was launched, looked amazing in the photographs. I've seen one in the flesh. The wheels are almost too big. The wheel arches are almost too big. It looks a bit like a cartoon. And I think the current RS4 is a really sweet car. So right now, I think I'd save the money and have the RS4, because a loaded RS6 is so much money. Matt Rideout or Ridout. He's had a couple of Clio 182s. Are current hot hatches as much fun as the older, lighter ones? Simple answer, no. The car that comes closest is probably the Fiesta ST, but even that has some rubber between you and what's going on. There's this sense that there's padding between you and the action. It's not as immediate. So sadly, you know, the days of those, you know, those early Civics and the 80s hot hatches as well, they're gone. You'd have to accept they're gone. But I think if you had a current Fiesta ST and played with it, you'd end up with something quite special. Now we're going to end on something slightly different tonight. Remember on Blue Peter back in the day when sometimes they go behind the studio doors and you'd see Shep having a fat one out the back? Joking. Well, here we go, behind the scenes. I'm in the E34 M5. Now, when I bought the car, the head unit was completely knacked, as you can see, and it had to come out. However, I found a solution. Watch this. This is genius from me. Here we go. Fits perfectly. Bose Mini sound link, single DIN socket. Wedge it in there. Perfect. Look at that. There's my Bluetooth connectivity working perfectly. Top tip. See you soon. Evening all. Some questions. After which, some whiskey. Oakley Edward Wheelwright. That's the longest Instagram handle I've ever seen. If you had to choose 2 automotive folk, famous or otherwise, for an evening of whiskey and stories, who would you choose? That's a good one, isn't it? Imaginary dinner party question, but in the car world. Based on what I've experienced in the last year, I'd say Martin Brundle and Damon Hill, because they're fantastic raconteurs and they're super bright and they always say stuff that makes you go, whoa, that was interesting. Other than that, I'll tell you what, Eddie Jordan with a few sherbets down him is fantastic company as well. I can go on and on. Of my mates, I have so many car mates. A Meaden, a Bovingdon, a Prosser, a Frankel, all that lot. Brilliant fun. And the ones I didn't mention will now hate me. Owen Rad, what is the best driving sub? Oh, come on. How long have you got? Me, Queens of the Stone Age, go with the flow, like that. I would also say I'm a massive fan of Van Halen's Jump, because it just makes me feel so good about myself. And Anything by ZZ Top. I mean, literally anything. Amy Stu Clark. Biggest disappointment of a driving road after you'd actually driven it. The Stelvio Pass, by a mile. Don't bother going. Harry Moo. Why are you in your car? Because it's the only time of day I get to sit in my car without being hassled by some other human being or the phone or something else. So, I like being in my car. DFH001. Is the 991 Carrera S a future classic? No. Chrissy Smith. What's the best engine that deserved a better chassis? Oh, that's a great little question. I like sort of hybrid cyborgy style questions. What would you put with what? Alfa Romeo 156 GTA. Amazing V6 that they fitted transversely into the normal 156, and the rest of the car was utter dog poo. JJV Maguire. Given all the shit around McLaren depreciation and negative press by influencers, would you own one? And which one? Absolutely, love them. And they're going to be cheap soon, aren't they? 720S, don't really care what spec it's in. I just still think it's the most complete sports car I've ever driven. And I know they have their gremlins, but I got a funny feeling, a bit like TVRs back in the day. You always bought a Griffith or a Cerbera that had someone else had lived with for a year and done 5,000 miles, because they basically had sorted all the problems out and just debugged it. So I'd like a debugged 720S. I think it's a magnificent car. Now, look, lots of you ask me questions. I can't answer all of them. Thank you very much for submitting them, and I do go through them as many as I can. So keep asking, and I'll keep answering. Now, go and have a whiskey. Afternoon, my loyal whiskey lovers. Sorry about the last 2 days. Just didn't get around to it, had the stuff doing, and sometimes the mood takes a bit of a dip. I thought I'd just chill for a bit. But I'm back up and at it. J. Cantle Photography. What do you think of the BMW E30 Touring? Would you ever consider buying one? I love them. They're gorgeous cars. The E30 Touring might be the best looking estate conversion of a saloon car ever. It's wonderful. I mean, it's very compromised because the boot lid doesn't really open from low enough. But one of those 325i with the sort of sportiest suspension and the seats, the bolstered, heavily bolstered seats, I'd love one of those. Maybe whack in a big motor as well. Someone's done an E30 M3 Touring, haven't they? Have you seen that? Google that. Looks like warmed up turds. So they're probably best to look at and polish than drive. One of 10 NE. One of 10E. I'm replacing my 140i, thinking of replacing my 140i with an ISF. Now that's a very interesting one, because warmed up turds. So they're probably best to look at and polish than drive. One of 10 NE. One of 10E. I'm replacing my 140i, thinking of replacing my 140i with an ISF. Now that's a very interesting one, because what tends to happen is that when the new stuff comes out, the ISF or the Lexus always comes last in the group test against all the Germans, because it's lacking a bit dynamically, probably doesn't have a diff fitted, usual stuff they forget. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, and suddenly the Lexus is the one to buy, because it's built so well, it's been looked after, it's rare. Yeah, so they always end up being the second-hand buyers of choice. And the GSF, I ran one of those for a bit. I've got a soft spot for one of them. I'll have one of them tomorrow. Gorgeous car. BDVTJE. Millimilia. Which car would you choose? I did the Millimilia in a C-Type with Alex Bunkum. It was something I'll never forget for many good reasons, and also for some other reasons, because it's a mad event. So I wouldn't do it again. I think it's the most dangerous thing I've ever done in a car. By the way, Mr. Bunkum is a hell of a driver. He showed me things I've not seen before or since. Hot Foil Ben. Which is the most scary at night? Nürburgring or Spa? Very simple. Nürburgring. Lots of people asking about the E60 M5 image that I put up yesterday. What do I think of that? And what do I think of it? It's obviously the one that's aged the worst. I mean, the interiors fall apart. The engines fall apart. It just isn't robust at all. But It's a V10 that revs like that in either a saloon car or an estate car body. I just think they are... I mean, they couldn't have aged worse, could they? But what an exciting package. And I've got a funny feeling they might be worth buttons soon. So do you just buy one when they're £8,000 and put a massive sequential lever in the middle there and drive it like a 90s touring car? I mean, the noise. So, yeah, I love them. When it was new, it was fantastic car. And it had a warranty. But out of warranty, a disaster. Last question from a Matt LeBlanc from Los Angeles. He asked 2 questions. The first one, why aren't cars fitted with electric turbochargers? They could then just literally dial out the turbo lag. He's absolutely right, it would, wouldn't it? I mean, we know that Audi has a 3rd turbocharger on the SQ7 that's electric. And that can really help get rid of the lag. And the reason for that is it runs a 48-volt electrical system, doesn't it? So I presume the reason why there aren't more electrical turbos is that you need a 48-volt electrical system in the car to be able to wind a turbo up or control it the way you need to dial out the lag. But he makes a point, electric turbos, so you can just get rid of the lag. That's instant CCs, isn't it? He asked one other question, which is, who is your favourite actor in Friends? Your favourite character in Friends? Joey. I just thought he was great. I really did. Massive fan. Now, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a whiskey and keep chirpy. Enjoy this time with your garden, with your living room, with your family, with your TV, whatever. Keep your chin up. Good evening, all. Sorry about a couple of days' absence. Yeah, there you go. That happens during lockdown, doesn't it? James Hunter, 85. In this downtime, long question. What about books about driving? If you can't drive, can you read about driving and improve your driving? Well, there are very few books about road driving that I've ever read that I'm interested in. But racing driving books, well, there's loads out there. Frank Gardner's Racing Driver's Manual is a bit of a classic, probably in the late 60s, early 70s. That's a really good book. Michael Crum did a book about 7-8 years ago. Very good GT and sports car driver. It's a detailed book, and there's a lot of detail in there, but if you can find a copy of that, that's worth getting. And I think the motoring biography, autobiography that I find the most interesting on the subject of setup and driving is probably Mark Donohue's The Unfair Advantage, which in itself is worth buying, and any self-respecting motorsport fan should own a copy. Call me Al. You can have one Alpha for the rest of your life to drive. The new Giulia Quadrifoglio or a 1968 GTA Junior Stradale. No question, I'd have the old car. I think the Alpha GTA is the old one. It is rapidly emerging as an absolute classic. A friend of mine describes it as a blue-collar 250 short wheelbase Ferrari, and he's right, because in some circumstances they're bloody quicker, a tuned-up one. Go to Alcoholics, have a look at what they're selling. Whoa. Jake Nathan, 24. Which is worse, yet another 800 horsepower hypercar, or the companies that modify them further? Oh, bloody hell, it's like choosing between syphilis and gonorrhea, isn't it? Yeah, we don't need any more 800 horsepower hypercars. You can't drive them anywhere. They're utterly pointless. As an engineering exercise, I thought the last round of hypercars made by the big manufacturers were worthwhile because they showcase forthcoming technologies that we're going to have. Hybridity, torque filling, clever transmissions, weight-saving technologies. That's worthwhile, but just another one of these. Hey, look at me. Look at the size of my willy, or not. I'm not interested in them. And the idea of modifying it further, yeah, we need the modifications less, don't we? But we don't really need either. Chris Glover. Favourite marketing campaign for a road car on telly? That's a good question. He suggested Cog, which was that wonderful Honda film where they effectively ran a sort of like a domino run, didn't they? But of components of the car. And I think he's probably answered his own question. That's the best advertising campaign I've ever seen. And there have been some great ones. And I think a special shout must go out to Bill Withers' Lovely Day. Now, was that a Ford Mondeo or a Ford Sierra? I think it was a Ford Sierra, or was it a Vauxhall Cavalier? I have to go and check. That was for me the most famous song, or the song that stuck most in my head from a car advert from when I was a child. A Fergus something 18. Was it the Nika 12 that tasted like caramel? It was the Nika from the barrel, I think. Is that the 12? I finished it and thrown it away, so I couldn't tell you. Adrian RLB ST something. The M3 CSL did a 750 at the ring 17 years ago. God, I feel old. How much faster would it go on modern tyres? That's a good question. The tyre is everything around that place, any race circuit. I would say that an M3 CSL will probably go 8 to 10 seconds quicker on the very latest rubber. But there's one caveat. The M3 CSL came on the first ever Michelin Pilot Sport Cup that was developed for road use, and it was very, very sticky, but it was hopeless in all other weather conditions. So it might just be that it was a very quick tyre, but I still think 8 to 10 seconds in a really modern tyre, probably. Right, all. Yeah, not the best 2 days for me. I've had enough, really. Like you, I dipped a bit. So if you dip, get on Zoom, speak to some mates, and read a good book and listen to some good music and look at some old photographs and give yourself a lift. And I'll see you again, hopefully, tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hello, how are we all? Today I am sporting one of my favourite old tops. It's actually a revolting garment, but it's from the 2002 Nürburgring 24 Hours, which was one of the best races I've ever done in a Caterham of all things. Became 11th overall. It was a stunning race with Team Parker Racing. But what I want to know is, Stuart Parker, who chose the colour of this garment? Who said, I want it in a light brown that's a bit like diarrhea? It's horrible, but I love it. Also got challenge consulting from my friend Chris Cooper. There you go. 18 years ago that was. Let's do some questions. Barnaby 777. Why are there so many franchise-approved 718 GT4s for sale at well over list price? Because, and this is a mantra by which we should all live, there were too many sold to the wrong people for the wrong price and for the wrong reasons. And that's going to be part of the correction process. Paul 077225. Do you think Resto Mod reimagined cars like Singer, Alphaholic, etc. are a short-lived fad, or will they be forgotten in the near future? I think they're here to stay, and I think they're a fantastic idea because they tap into what we all want, which is we want a car that excites us in the way that it drives, and we want a car that's dynamically good and feels modern and is quite safe and is fast, but we also want it to remind us of the cars that we loved in our youth. So for me, you know, there need to be more. If Peugeot or someone did a 205 GTI looking car, I'd buy one. Why isn't Mercedes making a car that looks like a W124 E-Class? They must all be sitting there thinking, we need to revisit it. And of course, in 10 years' time on common electric platforms, they can just do what they want. Everything will be the same underneath in 15, 20 years' time, won't it? So why not just say, I'll have a E28 M5 looking car that does 0 to 60 in 1.5 seconds? Ryan J. Hassler. Oh, he asks about the E90 M3. Lots of people ask about these cars, and it's a repeat question that I've been ducking slightly. I think they're wonderful. When they were new, they were great. I had a white one, an M3 coupe. Actually, looking back, I preferred the saloon, but I had a coupe myself. It's just, it's from that era when BMW's ambitions knew no bounds. You know, the M5 was a 5-litre V10. This thing was a 4-litre V8. But they're tricky, you know, they wear out and they cost a lot to run. But if you're not going to do massive miles in it, it's a wonderful way to remind yourself of what a normally aspirated car was like when BMW made them great. So I would advise, but just be careful. F1 NCN. Perfect dog wagon with unlimited budget for 2 dogs. Now, you're looking at it the wrong way. Because it's the dog that decides. Think back to Harry Potter. It's the sorting hat is the dog, okay? Because I've been to buy cars of my dreams. You know, I'd go to buy a beautiful estate car, and I thought I'd take my woofer with me. He's no longer with me anymore, sadly. But he would reject the car. I'll tell you what, I borrowed a Golf R estate off VW for a bit and loved it. So I went to buy one and took the dog. He'd been a bit fussy in the back, but he didn't like it. So the Golf R didn't ever come because the dog didn't like it. Other cars, he never liked my last E63 either. David Littlejohn. What is the worst V12 ever? God, that's a great question. I've not had that much time to think about it. He suggests the XJS. But the engine's great, and I do like an XJS V12. What's the worst V12 I've driven? I mean, I once drove a 550 Maranello that had a very restrictive exhaust on it because it was in a country where they had tricky emissions, I think. And I have to say, I struggled to believe it was a V12. But I love a 550 Maranello. Do you know what? Why don't you lot answer that? Send me in your replies to that and what you think. Andrew Smith. Choose one to live without. Manual gearboxes or whiskey. Very simple. I'd live without whiskey over a manual gearbox because there's nothing for me that replicates the joy I get from changing gear, which does It's not a utterance I want to make outside of these specialist circles. But there's other beverages I love other than whiskey. So much as I love whiskey, I'll keep my manuals. Stay well, people. And remember this, if you're going to make team apparel, don't make it in light diarrhea brown like this. Cheers. Evening all. Sorry about the absence the last couple of nights. Has it been 2 nights? Mixture of just the usual. A couple of whiskies, busy, life-changing events, that kind of thing. Right. Chris Arkley. Is a Jag Project 8 worth the money or crazily overpriced? Well, there's 2 ways of looking at this. There always is. You can either judge the vehicle on what you think it's worth relative to its peer group, if it has a peer group, and Project 8 probably doesn't. Or you can just say anything's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And I would say that the Project 8 is a very good vehicle to confuse both of those strategies, because on the one hand, it's crazily overpriced. I mean, it's just a saloon car that doesn't offer an awful lot more in terms of raw performance than a German equivalent, but it's a lot more money. Having said that, its components are very special. A lot of engineering work's gone into it, and it's great to drive. But it's difficult. These things, people are still asking 130, 140 grand for them. They've not sold them all. And it looks like you'll be able to buy a McLaren 720S for that very soon, if not now. So how can it be worth as much as a 720S? It can't. Ergo, it's probably overpriced. Junior 130185. If you could change any race result in history, what race and who would have been the winner? I need to get this right now. It would have been Adelaide 95 when Michael Schumacher took out Damon. That should have been Damon's. That was outrageous. And every time I've written about Schumacher or thought about Schumacher, I've always felt that my respect for his greatness, and obviously he's in a tragic situation now, but that was unforgivable. S8SST 180, is that right? Favourite motorcycle of all time? I can only judge these things on my own experience, and the Aprilia Tuono is the best bike I've ever ridden. I just can't believe how much fun it is. When I started reading bike magazines quite late, because I wasn't into bikes when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to be, Mum and Dad wouldn't let me, I always wanted an SP1 and an SP2, so I've got an SP1 stuck away in the shed. TBP 88. I'm moving from a Z4M coupe. Should I buy a 996 C4S? No, because the vehicle you mentioned at the end of your question, I've just about could afford a 996 Turbo. Get one of those. They are fantastic. X50 pack or an S. God, what a great car to drive. Morris JP. I have an F80 M3 CS on lease. Do I pull the trigger and buy it outright? I would, because I'm not sure we're going to see cars like that ever again. It's a very, very special vehicle. Marino Franchitti, my mate Mino. Have you ever had a better day in a race car than the Lister at the TT? No. 2013 in the Lister Jaguar Coupe. I mean, we line up thinking got no chance of getting anywhere in the race, and I end up in my stint leading. I remember thinking, as I went up the inside of Jean Lacey in a 250 GTO, I thought, this isn't happening, this is batshit. We didn't win in the end, it was a shame, but what a fun day out. And I have to say, walking back through the paddock with my mate Neil Carey, who does all the filming, at Neelos Carey, we're walking along and Jean Lacey's walking in front of us, and Neilo nudged me and goes, "You've only stuck up the inside of Jean, haven't you?" And I went, "It's Jean." He goes, "No, he spells it Jean, it's Jean." And on that note, have a good evening. Evening all, hope you're well. I've been pretty good. I bought an angle grinder, not because I need one, but because I've never had one, and I quite fancy just grinding away at some stuff. I think you can say that on Instagram, can't you? And my favourite tipple the last couple of days has been a Glenfarclas 105. It's cask strength honey. Bit more kick to it, but with a drop of water, comes alive. It's a wonderful drop. Try some. Some questions. Physiolo Josh. Are you a big gamer? I suppose if you get to do it in real life, it's a bit pointless. Well, there is partly that, but I was actually really into Gran Turismo. In about 97, 98 when it came out, I just loved Gran Turismo on the PlayStation, and I became totally obsessed with it. And I probably played it a bit too much and a bit too late, and I think it sort of altered the way my brain works, and I became quite sensitive to the light on the screen and didn't like it and felt nauseous playing the games, and I haven't really been engaged since. There have been some of the later versions of Forza that I think are fantastic, and I watch what's going on with the whole iRacing community. I think it's a great thing, but it just doesn't get me. So, because I should have an amazing setup and I should have all the bits and bobs, but do you know what? If I can't drive a car properly, I don't want to drive one virtually. I'll go and listen to some music or angle grind. K. White, 1973. I don't normally do this sort of thing, but in your honest opinion, would a manual gearbox enhance the driving experience of an R35 GTR? Well, first of all, Mr. and Mrs. White, don't worry. There's nothing nefarious about posing questions or asking questions on Instagram. It's not like you're doing something awful. The gearbox situation is a good question, because I think most of us think that a manual gearbox, will always add to the driving experience. But actually, some cars, they don't need it. And an R35 is a good example. It should be paddles. It was designed to have a DSG gearbox to make that engine and its power band and its torque capabilities and characteristics work. It needs all those ratios. An R35 with a manual gearbox would be a pain in the arse. Senor Postman, 1M or Z3M S54? 1M all flipping day long. Oh, here we go, another one. Hallam 1664. I think he likes a beer. P1 or DLS? Oh, I've got a vested interest, but DLS, it's got the stick. It's got the stick. Colbo Weight. What would be your favourite circuit bend corner combination? Brackets, I'm a circuit marshal. Oh, there are so many. There are areas of circuits that have rhythm for particular drivers because maybe you've unlocked them or you just drive them better. But at the Nürburgring, when I get the whole act at the top of the circuit and then there's the Whitman afterwards, there's something in my body that always relaxes. I just love that sequence. There's a lovely rhythm to it. The way you can start to ride a few of the curbs, let the car run. I always exhale and just relax there. I think it's gorgeous. I think Beckett's Maggots coming onto the Hangar Straight at Silverstone is always breathtakingly brilliant. Monza's a circuit that gets a very bad name. Everyone thinks Monza's basically just a load of straights. But coming out of the second Lesmo, under the bridge to the Ascari chicane and getting the exit of the Ascari chicane right and then powering down to Parabolica, I mean, it's mesmerisingly special, because you think of those people that have driven it before you and you think you're so lucky just to be there. And it has great rhythm. There are loads. There aren't many bad ones. The only place I don't really like is Barcelona. I'm a bit rubbish there and I don't like the rhythm of the circuit. Andy B, 85. Do you think the bashing McLaren is getting online is justified? Well, that's a long one, isn't it? Partly yes, partly no. I think they've made lots of mistakes. But I think, the key to commenting on this stuff is to give a slap where it's necessary and give a nice comfy pat on the arse where it's also justified. And has McLaren got everything wrong? No, it's not. It's still making some amazing cars. I think it's got its volumes wrong and some of its reliability has not been quite so clever. But this is a company that 10 years ago hadn't made its first sports car, and it's matching Ferrari. That's brilliant. And we should always remember that and always celebrate it. But yeah, they're getting a few things wrong. But come on, can we just give them a bit of a hug at the moment? Everyone needs a hug. God knows it. Hey, have a good evening. Afternoon all, how are we? Some questions. Raz Redney. Some people are obsessed with the Nürburgring and they drive the same track over and over. Can you become a good driver by driving just one track? Yeah, I think you can. I mean, look at Sabine. She spends most of her time there and she's a fantastic driver. Also, the Nürburgring is the ultimate driving challenge. It has everything. It has the characteristics of a normal F1 style circuit in certain sections, and in a VLN configuration you do get the Grand Prix circuit, and then you get this kind of road track but with so much added danger. It rewards accuracy, it makes you think. I think if you only drove the Nürburgring well, you can consider yourself to be a great driver. Second part of the question, what about the bridge to gantry obsession? Can be irritating, but fundamentally it's a really, really good thing, because it gives people the chance to have an idea of how they're doing relative to all the times the manufacturers quote. I know the Nürburgring lap time thing got out of control, but for individuals to go out there in their own cars that they've tuned up or prepared for the circuit, what a great idea. And the fact that you still get to go and drive it is amazing. Let's just celebrate that fact. So bridge to gantry, great idea. Ad Gethin. £150,000 on a GT3 Touring or 150k on a 15-acre field, a rally and Impreza, and a motocross bike, which is more fun? That's a great question. Well, 15 acres isn't enough space to have fun in the rally car, I don't think, but probably with the dirt bike, but I'm not good enough to take advantage of the dirt bike. So my answer would be, sadly and predictably, the Touring, because I just love that car. I get to test all manner of modern cars that are much more expensive and much faster, and I always get back into the Touring and think, this is all you could ever want. It's so good to drive. Steve Henson, UK. If you were a car, what would you be? Make, model, colour? Would you be manual or automatic? Well, I'd be manual to start with, of course I would. I think I'd probably be... What would I like to be? I think I'm a bit of a 996 turbo, really. A bit old, beyond my best, but could surprise under certain circumstances. I'm reasonably reliable, and I can be quite quick. Is that a good answer? What colour would I be? Midnight blue. Adam Gould. What estate car would you buy for £7,500? Has to be reliable for motorway driving, and has to tow a racing Mini. Also, I love Jessica's boobies. The second bit you can keep to yourself, Adam. E-Class, probably. I think E-Class is the way forward. The big question is, these days, you go diesel or petrol? I would probably go for a petrol motor, because then you don't have to sort of struggle with all those particulate filters and the other problems that come with a diesel. What I've noticed is that you've got a high mileage turbo diesel and you keep pounding it out and it gets used a lot. Nothing clogs up and they're wonderful. But any other mileage, if you use it occasionally just for towing when you go into a race circuit, I'd have a petrol now, I think, just because it would last longer. Small notice, when you next see me, what hair I've got might be a different colour. Good night. Good evening all. What can I say? I've always been told that blonde is beautiful, so I know that my learned colleague Andrew Flintoff is a natural blonde with a hint of ginger, and McGuinness has just gone and made his hair go much blonder. I thought I'd better join the crew. It's got a sort of light morning piss colour at the moment, but I'll work on it. But I quite like it. It makes me look less bald, actually, so maybe it needs to stay. We'll see. Some questions. Actually, before I do that, I've done it for a reason. Can we earn some money? I've made myself look an utter Burke here. And I want to earn some money for the Great Western Air Ambulance. So after this, please, I'll put an @ on here. Go to their page and just give them a couple of quid. I'd be so grateful. It's an amazing service and I want to get some money that way. So please do that. Now, some questions. Olek.mc. Have you ever driven an E60 M5 manual? It must be the best super saloon ever. Wow. What a can of worms this one is. Everyone thought it was going to be the most incredible car, matching that 5-litre normally aspirated V10 with a stick. Turns out, I've never driven one, but I've never heard a good word said about it. Everyone says it flatters to deceive. The ratios don't quite work, the shift isn't very good, and it reminds you that the car was designed to have paddles and is better that way. So, yeah, a bit disappointing. Tony Greenway. When we all have to drive an electric car, will the instant power make up for the fact that you'll not have a manual gearbox? No. 33 King David B. What shitbox are you in and where's the bloody 2CV? I'm in my fake E34 M5 Touring that I adore. 2CVs in the shed. Comes out occasionally, I've been using it a bit. It's a joyous thing. And actually, on the subject of 2CVs, I've got a 425 1957 car. I want an earlier 375cc car because I want to travel even slower. James Pritchard, 82. Sutcliffe went wheels up in a Jag. What's the most... he did. God, what a thing that was. Google that. What's the most terrifying passenger ride you've ever been subjected to? What's the worst one? Do you know what? I was helping sell some cars many years ago at Castle Combe, and a well-known television celebrity wanted to buy a KTM crossbow. I won't say what his name was. And I had to sit next to him as he tried to drive it around a wet Castle Combe, and it was quite obvious that he couldn't drive the thing, and he was trying to slide it round. And I said, can you stop driving like that? And about 4 corners later, he fired it straight into the barriers and wrecked the car. And I was terrified because he had no control over the vehicle. I think it was the last time I actually sat next to someone in a vaguely professional capacity on a circuit. I thought, I could never do this again. As we went in, I thought, this is going to hurt. Bad celebrity. Pavel, 1986. You love the GT3 Touring, but do you think it drives the same as GT3 manual? Are there any differences? I do sometimes think the suspension is a bit different, but it's not. There is one difference. The touring, to me, is much louder. It just sounds louder the whole time. Other than that, I just prefer the way the touring looks. Sprint Pete. Which fast forward? BDA Escort or RS200? BDA all day bloody long. A Millington in a lovely shell, Mark II shell, would just be gorgeous. And RS200, amazing car, but too complicated for me, and as a standard road car, actually quite ordinary to drive. Please go and look at the Great Western Ambulance and give them some money, and stay well. And if you fancy bleaching your hair, I can recommend this colour. It's called Dehydrated Morning Wee. Afternoon all. Whiskey Files. Might have enjoyed a drop or two last night. Feeling very wholesome. MJ Witch 1. Any chance of a word on the new Cayman GTS 4.0? Oh, many words to be spared on this vehicle, because Porsche's fixed the 718, haven't they? They've put in this 6-cylinder engine, manual gearbox. Just reminds you how wrong they went with that awful poxy 4-cylinder car, which, yes, handled well, but the rest of it, no thank you. There's just a luxury, an expensiveness to the powertrain now that I love. I have to say, I'd have, as a road car, the GTS over the GT4. I really would. I just think it's a better all-round package for the road, and maybe those that have been fighting over premiums on GT4s, which have gone anyway, might have got it wrong. The GTS is a superior car, and there was a green press car that I drove that looked fantastic. Get in there. Emil van Madsen. Which car would you recommend for inexperienced drivers to learn basic car control? Particular car, difficult to narrow it down. What I'd say is, for me, not too short a wheelbase, front engine, rear wheel drive, lock-in differential. That's the platform you want. So anything from a Mark II Escort to a 3 Series BMW, 5 Series BMW, just, you know, lock the diff up and away you go. It is, once you've learned it, it's one of the best things in life. Charlie Wasboss. What do you think of the new Caterham Supersport 1600? Caterhams are increasingly of interest to me. Once this is down, I think I might have to go and get one, because more and more supercars, hypercars that I just go, you know, what the, you know what, who cares? And I saw someone in a Caterham before the lockdown, and they just looked like the happiest person on earth. They looked like they'd found the solution to all our problems, and I would love one of those cars again. I love them. Nameless. Who is the best? Sorry, here we go. So someone sent me this the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but I remembered the question. It was great. Who is the best non-professional driver you've seen? In other words, someone who isn't a name, who isn't a Formula 1 driver or a rally driver. Lotus, when I started doing this job, used to produce some exceptional driving talent in their testing department, and they really were amazing drivers. I'm thinking of Matt Becker, Gavin Kershaw. Gavin went on to go on and become a racing driver, and Alistair McQueen, who, you know, looked like your uncle, used to sit up with a bow tie and then outdrift Formula 1 drivers. They were real heroes. There are some unspoken ones as well. There's a bloke at Porsche whose name I'm not going to mention. He calibrates all the systems, the ESP and the traction control for all the GT cars. Sits there and does it all. And Porsche is so protective of him and how good he is, and not putting his name in stories, that they wouldn't let me say his name. They'd be upset with me. But he is amazing. If you sat next to him, you'd think he should be winning the World Rally Championship. Raffaele Di Simone, and, you know, in Ferrari, Rafa's a fantastic driver. So there's loads of people out there that have never felt the need or had the chance to go and compete and win. Doesn't mean they aren't immensely skilled. Andrew Hewitt, 5354. Have you ever found yourself making an impulse purchase after a few too many whiskies during lockdown? Well, quite often, whiskey leads to more whiskey purchases, and suddenly you find yourself buying more expensive whiskey. But on that note, I will deny all knowledge of the new KTM EXC 300. This is currently sitting in my garage. Have a lovely evening. Evening all. How are we? A couple of questions, and then a longer one at the end about this iRacing thing that's been going on. People gave me lots of grief on Twitter. I love it. Here we go. Mr. 2 Mark III. Always wondered what you thought of the Lotus Evora. Classic Lotus from that era, really, 10 years ago. How they made a car that good with so little money, I don't know. It must have had the total budget of a left rear indicator for a Porsche, and yet somehow they made a world-beating sports car. But I always preferred the Porsches of the day and some of the BMW sports cars, because the engine just wasn't up to it in the Aurora for me. The chassis was great. The packaging was a bit ropey because the +2 thing didn't really work. But on the right road, on the right day, they can feel better than any other sports car. But that's true of just about any Lotus, isn't it? So, great thing. And, of course, rare. Would I buy one of the really expensive new versions? No. Saku Sickerman. What's your opinion on a 3-year-old Audi SQ7 to replace the Passat 2-litre TDI as your second car? Well, SQ7 type large SUVs aren't my vehicles. I think they're wasteful and a bit silly. However, there's something about the SQ7. I think they look pretty good. And when you hear one go past with the sports exhaust button on, you think, wow, what was that? And they do go well. But 3 years, you're out of warranty. And a 48-volt electrical system and multiple turbochargers. I mean, the bills could be catastrophic, boss, so be careful. Now, the boy Hardy. I think this chap's on Twitter had a pop at me earlier. Fair play, his opinion. Do you really think iRacing is just a game, or were you stirring the pot? I was partly stirring the pot. Partly exasperated, because I think the way the world is at the moment, we've got many bigger problems than worrying about someone taking someone out in a virtual race. Have we not got bigger problems to worry about? But it does bring to the surface a nagging concern I've got about iRacing, which is I admire the skill, I admire everything that's going on in the sport and how it's growing. I admire the fact sponsors are getting involved. But yesterday, the actions of one bloke exposed that it's all a bit flawed for me, because there's no risk. There's no risk. I've got 2 teenage kids, all right? They spend most of their time gaming. They really do. I respect the gaming world. I respect the virtual world. It's going to take over my world, certainly. Let's face it. I've made a living out of doing something I love doing. If I was to apply that to my children, there's a good chance that at least one of them will probably end up making a living out of gaming, because that's their passion. So I don't disrespect it, and therefore I don't really like the way some people speak about it. Also, there are parallels, natural parallels, between the way people respond to social media posts about iRacing and the problem with the sport itself. And that is the lack of risk, the lack of consequence. You know, excuse the French, but lots of people call me a cunt today, other stuff. You know, since I became a Top Gear presenter, I've been regularly being called a packy and a good knows what for not being Jeremy, for the usual stuff. Water for ducks back for me. But the reason people do that online is because there are no consequences. They can't get a reaction from me, the physical reaction. And yet, in all that time, not one person's come up to me in the street and said something horrible to me. Not one person's come up to me and said one of the things they'd say online. And that tells me something. That tells me that there are no consequences. And that is transposed into the iRacing world. When you go into Eau Rouge on full tanks with slightly ropey tyres, you think, oh, God, is this flat or not? Almost certainly not. And the car's sliding around, you're thinking, if I get this wrong, I'm hurt. And the car's destroyed. And that is missing from iRacing, because the best racing drivers manage risks. That's what they're doing. They manage risk and reward. And that's what makes them world beaters. It makes them gladiators, and why I admire them. So I admire people that have come from the virtual world into real racing. Jan and you know, Ordonez, all those people. Of course I admire them. And I was slightly stirring the pot today, but I think Pagenaud exposed the problem with iRacing, that there's no consequence. So go well, everyone. Stay well. Don't get quite so wound up. All the threats and silly stuff and all boomer and all that, it's just useless, really. Let's get through this together. I just made an observation. Cheers. Evening all. Sorry about the strong sunlight. I'm trying to duck it a bit, but such is life. I need to have a look at my hair so much. Although I've managed to balance the colour about now with the purple shampoo. Yeah, an average day, really. A bit low. Did, however, find a packet of Rolos that I didn't know I had. Let's start with James Holder 97. I currently have one of the last classic minis. Lovely car. Thinking of selling and buying an Elise S1 or S2. What a great thing to swap out of and into. 2 significant cars. Now, the S2 is a much better car to drive. The S1 Elise was quite flawed. Had some handling issues. And they fixed loads of them in the S2. However, for me, if you bolt some newer tyres onto an S1, that solves half the problems. And there's something about the original. That first design looks better day by day to me. And if you could find one with the early aluminium brakes, well, don't tell me, because I'm looking for one at the moment. I think they are a stunning sports car. And they just remind us what a weird direction performance cars have gone in since. You know, we used to celebrate these things. 118 horsepower, 600 and something kilograms. That was all we needed. Now we have to have 600. We've all gone mad. Philly Seb 1. Do you think the Porsche 968 is a car to buy now because it'll go up in value? No. I think it's a car to buy now because I really like them. A 968 Sport, quite a lot less valuable than the Club Sport, is a beautifully balanced road car that you could use on the track now and again, but just a lovely thing. You've got to get over the four-cylinder problem. It isn't a problem for me. But I don't think anything's really going to go up in value for a while. It would be a brave man that predicts any motor car is going to be worth more next January than it was last January. Jacko Crew. Looking for something sporty for my 21st. I'm upgrading from an A3. Do I go for an 06 350Z, a 330 Ci, or maybe an EP3 Civic as a track project? The Civic. There's something about those cars. I just think the engine is remarkable. It just revs and revs and revs. Funky little package. Have a go at that. I know I normally advise the rear-wheel drive thing, but your two choices there, they leave you a bit flat. 350Z is just limited because there's not much you can do with the engine. 330 Ci, got the old German parts problem. Those expensive things to run, aren't they? I'd say go through the Civic now. Come back to the rear-wheel drive thing after that. Tubbies. That's spelled TU88BY5, I think. Can you talk about hot hatches? Oh, mate. Does the Pope shit in the woods? I can talk about these things forever. In fact, I'm not going to talk about them now. Let's do a dedicated one of these in a couple of nights' time where I'll try and contain my thoughts on 80s hot hatches into 4 minutes, because it's almost impossible. I hate qualifying the word impossible. It's very difficult. Lloyd Hackett. He's replying to a question about what's the best sounding car ever, and he's only 3 weeks late, but it's worth it. The Andy Burton 306 Cosworth has to be one of the best sounding cars ever. Do you know what? I should have listed it. It is amazing. I'm going to sign off tonight by saying, go to YouTube and type in Andy Burton 306 Cosworth and just watch and listen. It's so sad that car's no longer allowed to compete. Or doesn't compete. Wasn't allowed. Don't think it is anymore. Stay well. Hope tomorrow's better than today. Evening all. How are we? Slightly better day. And it's ups and downs, as they all do. Jono Stop. These vids make my day. Thank you, Jono. What do you think of Escort RS Cosworth, Sierra Cosworth RS Turbos? Any stories? Do you know what? It's all a bit before my time, the RS Cosworth thing. Because by the time I started driving, 92, we were into Sapphires and stuff like that. And I was too young to insure them. They were uninsurable for a while when I just started driving. Max Power had them all over the cover, but you're thinking, how do you insure that? I can't insure that. I love them. They were the things that made me love cars. This ridiculous homologation special one. And, of course, they were rare. When you saw the wing, the silhouette of the wing in Bristol, I always remember thinking, oh, wow. And then the Escort came along. The one, weirdly, I mean, the two that I crave, that it's fairly obvious, one of them is the RS 500, which is the big wing 3-door Sierra with the bigger turbo and the slightly funkier front end. But I just love the I love the two-wheel drive Sapphire, the 4-door. I just remember seeing sort of Tiff and the others hooning them about when I was younger and thinking, how does that go so fast for the money? So, lots of stories. Escort Fiesta RS turbos, they were no good. The French stuff was miles better. Joko 91. Looking at getting a Porsche 997 Gen 2 and selling my RS3. Thoughts? Do it. Do you know what? It won't be as quick. It probably won't be as quick. But it'll open your eyes to a different type of motoring and to engaging with a machine in a way you haven't done before. The RS3 is brilliant, but it's a blunt instrument. This thing is sophisticated and will reveal itself like a good human being over time. And if you think it's absolutely terrible, don't blame me. Jaffa Khan 1. Have you ever driven a Diablo? Thoughts? Not comparing it with a modern exotic, of course. Do you know what? Let's stop there. Let's compare it to a modern exotic. Because a good Diablo, particularly the last 6 litre, slaps most modern supercars into touch. Gated manual gear change. Massive engine out the back. Lots to throw you into a hedge. You're on your own. What a machine. A magnificent machine that had been kind of sorted by Audi at the very beginning of its ownership of Lamborghini. I think they are one of my favourite supercars. If I had the money, I'd have one tomorrow. I just think they are fan-bloody-tastic. And weirdly, they show exactly why so many modern supercars, hypercars, just don't hit the spot for me at all. Kilo GGRAM? It's a long question from this chap. I'm going to shorten it for you. He wants an E36 M3 Evo. Who wouldn't? He doesn't have the money. Many a person said that. I did as well once. Should he get a 328i Sport? Look, they're so far away from each other. If you can find a way of getting the M3, don't get the Evo. Get the 3-litre car with the 5-speed gearbox, because it hasn't got the fancy Vanos, the twin Vanos, and it hasn't got the 6-speed gearbox. So it's got a bigger set of gears, which are stronger. The whole car is just stronger. And I know it's not an Evo, but it's actually, dare I say it, sweeter. The steering's slower, and it is a bit of a boat at times on the steering front. But I love them. If I could find a low miles Avis Blue M3 non-Evo, a coupe, I'd be all over it. I'd have it, because they're just great cars. So go on, speak to Granny about an early legacy. Do something. Just find a way of getting some money to buy that, because the 328, great though it is, it's not the same thing. Jose P27. What car that you've sold would you love to buy back? Now, those of you that follow me for a while will know that I owned one of, whatever it is, 12 993 GT2s, which I sold for not much. It is now worth well over £1 million. But it says here, would you love to buy back? You don't have the £1 million to buy it back. So, what car do I wish I could buy back? One of my M3 non-Evos. I had a couple of those. I wish I could have one of those back. 993 RS. I had a midnight blue 993 RS Comfort. I'd love to have that back. My 996 GT2. I really love that car as well. That was a car I could maybe buy back. Yeah, those are up at the top of the list, I think. What else? Any 205s? Do you know what? I found it, but it's been messed around with, and I'm not being disrespectful to the guys that have got it. But my Lotus Elise, which was blue, azure blue with a black interior, I'd love to have that back, but it's now got a different engine in it, and they've really tuned it. It's a beautiful car, but I want a basic one. So maybe the Elise, actually. I had so much fun in that car. Okay. Didn't find any Rolos today or any other comestibles or confection. Stay well, and keep dreaming of driving. Evening all, how are we? I had some homeschooling today. I now think every teacher on the planet should be paid £1 million a year. They're superheroes. If you're a teacher, I toast you now. Cheers. Jordan Splay. Would you invest in a Lotus Carlton? No. That's not the verb to use in association with that vehicle. Would I buy one? Yes. Would I drive it? Yes. Is it magnificent? Oh, it's wonderful. But an investment, it is not. It's a money pit, and they rot, and things go wrong with them, and they're complicated, and all sorts of absolute horror stories. But when they're up and running, they're the best. I adore them. Mazda 323 guy. You might be able to guess what car he's got from his moniker. I have a 1995 Mazda 323F GLX, one of 9 left. I love this sort of stuff. Thoughts? I think they're great, mate. That was a car ahead of its time. And Mazda at that point in time was this what a weird mainstream manufacturer that made cars of a quality of a premium manufacturer. Mazda in the mid-90s was built better than a Mercedes. I really would be honoured to have my car named, because it needs a name. Okay, let's name it. Dave. I think Dave's a nice name for a Mazda 323F, so Dave it is. Martin C. Bean. You look like shit, Chris. Lockdown doesn't suit an active fella like you. Do you know what, boss? I was thinking the same, actually. Well, I've lost a bit of weight. I've been doing the old, pull-ups and sit-ups and everything. I'm much fitter than I was. But yeah, the old eyes are giving it away, aren't they? So I could do with being out and about, but it's not too bad. And hopefully we'll be moving soon. Louis Barbar. I have a 2016 M135i. Great car, boss. I love it. The sound, the pace, the practicality. Am I being silly wanting an M2? Should I hold off till they come down in price? Now, what I'm sensing here, Louis Barbar, is that you're a bit like I used to be, which is, in some respects, you feel like the M2 is almost a step beyond you, that it's not yours, that you almost don't deserve to be in it. I have this problem. And I used to look at stuff and think, well, and I use the word the whole time, unobtainium, I shouldn't have that. But you know what, an M2 isn't a massive leap on from your car. You can do it. Don't get yourself in financial straits. Don't stretch yourself too far. But if you can make the numbers add up, it's a much, much more enjoyable car. And you should try it. But don't get yourself in a pickle doing it. Okay? Right. Richard Hagval. What's your opinion on the S-Class W126 model? I'm thinking of buying a 300 SE. That's the one, by the way, from sort of mid to 80s to 1990. I'm thinking of buying one as a daily. That's punchy, Richard. A great daily, though. What a stylish motor vehicle. The last, probably the bulletproof built Benzes, hand-built. They were just tanks, weren't they? All I'll say is, if they were good enough for Bobby Ewing, they're good enough for you and me. Have a lovely evening, guys. Afternoon all. I'll level with you. I might have had a couple of sherbets on my Todd this afternoon, but I felt that the need for whiskey-based dribble outweighed my need to go for a sleep. Here we go. Nigel Saynor. I have a 575 Modificato. Nice. I also have an F12. You're beginning to boast now, Nigel. Would you think a 599 HGTE would be good to complete the lineup? I can't afford a GTO. It's a funny thing, this. I never really feel the need to complete a lineup of cars because I want to drive them. And weirdly, what you've ended up with is 3 cars that potentially would do the same thing. They would occupy the same role in my garage. So if you really want to complete the lineup and go, oh, I've got the 599, the F12 and the what have you, then great. I get that. But I don't really see the point. I can see why you'd want to do it, but I'm not sure I would. So I would say, well, for that money, why wouldn't you go and buy something different? Go and buy a 300 SEL 6.3 and cruise around Europe in it. Have a different car, a different flavour. But I understand if you want to do that, then I wouldn't actually go for an HGTE because it ruined the handling. I'd go for a basic 599. I had one. It was great. 22R Johnny. I'm a child of the 60s. Good lad. As a teenager, I lusted after an RS2000 and I got the chance to drive one later in life. It was so disappointing. Have any of your car heroes disappointed you? Oh, God, quite a few. So, first time I drove an Escort Cosworth, I couldn't believe how bad it was. Turns out it wasn't a very healthy one, but even then, it was pretty lacking in grunt, and it understeered, and it wasn't great. You're going to think I'm a heretic now. Lancia Delta Integrale, latest Evo one. I mean, an M135i would just show it a clean pair of heels every time. It wasn't very fast. I much preferred the sort of narrow-bodied Integrale 8-valve, 16-valve cars. Daytona, first time I drove a Daytona, I couldn't understand what was going on with the steering. I've driven some good ones since, and they're better. But what's this all about? Lots of things. You have to put these cars in context because you arrive at, let's say, a 20-valve Quattro, and you think, well, this is the one. But in reality, it's a shell that creaks about. It's not very strong. It's got 220 horsepower, and it's not very fast. And the gearbox is a bit woolly, and you think, hang on a minute. Was this just crap, or have things got much better? And it's the latter. You know, the bar's been raised so high now that any old car basically feels moderately shit. But you have to celebrate the shitness. That's the key. Right. Rammy's Gram. Thinking of pulling the trigger on a 1M. Do it. Good car. It's black. It's okay price. But I'm worried prices are about to fall through the floor. I think the prices of everything are going to fall through the floor, from Mars bars to golf clubs to cars. So buy it for the right reasons. Buy it because you want it. And if it depreciates, so what? You've got one of the best looking machines ever made. I love mine. Richard Major 86. What's your writing process? Do you write differently with different style for different publications? Okay, that's obviously try and write so that people can hear your voice in the writing. And so I always try and do that, which is irritating for some people and I hope calming for others. I think that's it for me today. Stay well, guys. It's a roller coaster, this, isn't it? I can't wait to be back in the normal world, and have a lovely evening. Hello all. Got my Concorde hoodie on. Love supporting the little museum in Bristol. 911 Kev, 450 SEL 6.9. Bad idea, just need to get it out of my system. I can't imagine a 6.9 being a bad idea under any circumstances. It's a wonderful motor vehicle and special. And in my experience, if you've got a car itch, you've got a scratch, just go and do it. What's the worst that can happen? Lose a couple of quid, you've ticked a box. That's what matters. Oliver Davis Holmes. Does that mean it's a sponsored post? Don't know. It's getting cheap. But is an F-Type V6 manual or a V8 Auto a decent purchase at 25 grand? Of course it is. I mean, they're great looking cars. Haven't they aged well, don't you think? The V8, early V8 ones were too noisy, the fancy ones, but I think they are still just a really easygoing British convertible or coupe. Yeah, big recommendation. Get a lot of questions about those. People are really eyeing them up, aren't they? James Pritchard, 88. You just won the N24. Oh, wow. And you head to the Piston Clouser. That's the bar where everyone drinks after a race there. And it's full of memorabilia and people write all over the walls and the ceilings. You go there to celebrate. What do you order to eat and to drink? And what do you write on the ceiling? Well, you order a steak on the stone, obviously, don't you? A fillet steak cooked on a white hot stone. Loads of chips. You have probably 5-bit burgers to start with before you move on to some local shots, I'd have thought. What would you write on the ceiling? I would write probably 12th time lucky. M. Hoon Jan 81. 2016 M4 Compact or a 997 second generation C4S, even though the Porsche is £10,000 more. Different cars here, really. Difficult to compare these. We are apples and pears, aren't we? I mean, the BMW would be a fantastic daily. I'd recommend it for that, but the Porsche is more special. It's probably more of an occasional car. So I'd have the Porsche to drive occasionally and have the BMW if it was my only car. I am Jofster. Have you driven a Renault 5 Turbo 2? Yes, very briefly. They look so good. I know they do. They don't drive quite so well. It was pretty disappointing. Second part of the question, who's a better racing driver, you or Dickie Meaden? Well, if you asked Richard, my good friend Richard, he would say that Dickie Meaden was a better racing driver. And he might be wrong. Evening all, how are we? A few questions, maybe fewer than normal, then we'll have a little think about Ferrari's announcement from yesterday, shall we? Chris K 4210. This is actually from Fraser, age 10. McLaren, Senna or Pista? Fraser, it has to be the Pista all day long because the Senna looks absolutely awful. And the moment that a car that special looks that bad, I'm not interested. And I'm not really driven by the way things look. Hence the reason I now look like this. But yeah, the Pista's a better road car. And if you want to go racing, buy a racing car. Swab Christian. I'm considering getting a Maserati 4200 as a weekend car, as a roadmap, to use Boris speak, to getting into a Ferrari one day. Could work, might not work. It might. You'll either get hooked on the Italian thing, or it'll put you off for life. So yes, it's either a gateway to a Ferrari when you can afford it, or it'll force you into buying a 911 and never having anything less. Either way, I'd have one. I love 4200s. They're just special cars. Go and have a go. Josh Pierce, 84. Been looking at a 996 GT2 for weekend occasional track days. Have no experience of analog or no systems. Management consultant speak. Could be problematic. I'd maybe start with something like an M3 that had a bit less power if you're going to go with the no TC thing. I had a 996 GT2 on the road. And, yeah, it was a proper handful. Modern tyres, I'm spitting. Management consultant speak. Could be problematic. I'd maybe start with something like an M3 that had a bit less power if you're going to go with the no TC thing. I had a 996 GT2 on the road. And, yeah, it was a proper handful. Modern tyres, I'm spitting a bit, sorry. Modern tyres make a difference. But actually, be careful. Lovely machine, though. If it was just for road use, I'd say yes and be careful. If it's going to be a track day car, Tom 33154. Chris, for the love of God, please share your thoughts on the new BMW 2 Series Grand Coupe. Oh, God, what have they done? I don't know. BMW seem to have these brain farts now and again, don't they? This time it's front-wheel drive, and they can't make the styling work with a front-wheel drive car. It just looks a bit odd, and the grill's a disaster, and, you know, I just think go and buy the last M140 and forget what they're doing right now. Right, Vettel. I'm accused of being anti-Vettel. I'm not at all. I don't quite understand his career. 4-time world champion, you can't take that away from him, although you could argue that he did have a significant advantage at times. People compare him to Lewis. Don't get that at all. I think Lewis has proved that he's on a different level now, and his statistics prove that. He's won with 2 different manufacturers, and I think the most important thing is the mistakes that Sebastian Vettel made in the last couple of years that I find inexplicable at times, and also the way that he drove into Lewis under safety car at Azerbaijan. I never really... That's terrible. What he did there. But, you know, I'm told he's a great guy and the best of luck to him in the future. But don't forget those that defend his record at Ferrari. At the beginning of 17 and 18, he had a better car. Yes, Mercedes may have caught up. But the way that post-German Grand Prix he fell away in 2018 was I've never seen it happened before to someone that was leading a championship to quite that degree. It was remarkable. So he'll be missed. But I don't think he's up there with Alonso or Lewis or Michael Schumacher. I really don't. But just an opinion. The great thing about motorsport is you can have opinions. Stay well. Good evening all. How are we? Sorry about yesterday. Yesterday was Anyot 12. I just finished that. Moving on to an 18, maybe later on. But I'm doing lots of exercise as well. I'm getting fit. Hope you are. And obviously the big news is that Top Gear is back filming next month. So yeah, I better do some work. I'm very much looking forward to it. Ali Eshgi, Eshghi. What is the different feeling you get from driving a car over riding a bike? Which do you appreciate most about both? It's interesting that. Broadly speaking, the most interesting aspect of learning to ride a bike late, like I did it in 2014, I think it was how much it improved my respect for the road as a driver. Once you've ridden around on a motorcycle and felt that vulnerability and realised that everything's potentially a weapon that can kill you, you do respect the road better. I think everyone that does a car driving licence should ride a bike. It's not a practical solution, but it would make them better drivers. Likewise, everyone should drive a van, drive a lorry, because you get to adjust your point of reference and respect that other road user. And the next time you come across them doing something a bit random, you have more sympathy for what they're doing. So, yeah, but the feeling of riding them and driving, I'm quite good at driving. I'm all right at that. So I feel confident. Riding, I'm not as good a rider. So what it's really taught me is that I appreciate the systems on the bike, and I have a less sniffy view of the systems that protect, let's say, car drivers that are less skilled. Bike gives a sense of freedom that's not there in the car, and I love the fact that you have to concentrate 100% on the bike. It's a great way to just cleanse your mind of the daily grind. That was a long answer. Ayub HJRT. I see many 1Ms with an E92 V8 engine. What do you think about this philosophy? Thank you and have a good day from France. I miss France. I love going there. I love driving there. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I think a 1M should be turbocharged. I love that sort of turbo surge, that short wheelbase, the way that it handles, the way it steers with that heavy steering, hydraulic steering. And it just suits having a turbocharged engine. It really does. I haven't driven one of these V8 ones, and I don't know. It's something about that punchy, pugnacious little street fighter with a turbo engine. I'm sitting in one at the moment. I love it. TPAB72. How many tanks of fuel did you use making the Chiron Top Gear video? I can't tell you that. It was lots. What I can tell you is that on the way back from filming in Oman, a test Chiron, to see whether the thing would blow up or sort of, burn a piston out running on lower octane fuel. And the answer was, if you accelerate hard at all, you'll blow the engine up. So I basically drove a Chiron for 5 hours on tick over to get it back with a test Chiron to see whether the thing would blow up or sort of, burn a piston out running on lower octane fuel. And the answer was, if you accelerate hard at all, you'll blow the engine up. So I basically drove a Chiron for 5 hours on tick over to get it back with 95 octane in it. And then we got into the UAE, we put some super juice in. Sorry, I'm hay fevery today. Now, a couple of broad things. This F1 news. Ricciardo to McLaren, Sainz to Ferrari. I think it's fantastic news. I think Sainz is not an obvious number 2, and he won't want to be. He'll go in there and fight, and I think that's great for young Charles, great for Ferrari, great for the sport. And I think Ricciardo and Lando Norris is going to be fascinating, because they're like the brat pack, aren't they, of Formula One. They've got great social media presence. They are very marketable. They clearly get on well enough, really well together at the moment. But I think that'll last about 2 hours once they get to Melbourne next year. It'll be full-on fisticuffs. I can't wait. So, yeah, really good stuff going on in F1. I think it's great news. The vacant seat at Renault, I can't imagine Vettel will do it. And do you know what? Much as I think Fernando Alonso's amazing, I think we want to see some fresh young blood. Give an opportunity to someone else, don't you? Stay well, guys and girls. Afternoon, all. Right, here we go. Some questions. Sean Ellis 199. MX-5 or GT86? GT86. Classic film of the week. Late Model X KR or DB9 Volante? Now, the DB9 Volante is always a car that's slightly wooed me with its charms, because I quite like a DB9. I think they're very beautiful cars. I like the fact it's normally aspirated V12. It's got that ZF6 big gearbox. And then you drive one and realise they's a bit wobbly. And I couldn't deal with the wobbles. You basically chase the steering wheel around the dashboard. And it didn't work for me. So the XKR is stiffer and better. Alex. Was added to my Vanquish earlier. Nice. And came across, it was almost Jazz Club-esque, wasn't it? A Mulsanne. In a straight line, I wasn't dropping him. Should I have my engine looked at? No, you shouldn't, because if it was a speed, which it almost certainly was, they are rapid with a capital R. Wow, they go. Yeah, they're fantastic bits of kit. I remember sitting with a good friend of mine, he might watch these, on the way to Germany on de-restricted Autobahn, in Germany on de-restricted Autobahn, and doing easy 185, chatting to each other. Just a monster, that thing. AG Playbook. Top 5 M cars ever made. Oh, come on, man. E28 M5, E39 M5, E46 M3, F80 M3. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth one. Coming in fifth. E30 M3, but it's close. Robert McGee, 28. On tight, twisty back roads, is it more fun to have front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive? Do you know what? It doesn't make any difference. What's more pertinent on those roads is the engine, the quality of the engine, the quality of the gearbox, the suppleness of the suspension, stuff like that. The way that the thing's driven doesn't really matter so much, because with modern tyres, you're so unlikely to be losing traction, you won't really know. And modern front-wheel drive cars quite often don't feel front-driven unless you get a bit of torque steer, which is just not there anymore. So the orientation of the drive makes no difference. Just get the best engine, gearbox and chassis you can. It's a hot day today, isn't it? Stay well, everyone. Evening all. Before we delve into some questions, I wanted to discuss, well, it's not really a discussion, it's a monologue, isn't it? Because you can't answer. This Volvo speed limit thing. So Volvo's announced a couple of months ago that it was going to deliver all new cars from now on with a speed limit of 112 miles an hour, 180 kilometres per hour. With a very self-serving message about being a world leader in safety. And do you know what? I was reading it again, the press release today. And I think it's some of the most self-serving shite I've ever read in my life, actually. Volvo is a brand I've admired for years because I love the fact that it blends that kind of Scandinavian safety with a level of prestige and desirability that recently has been stunning in the marketplace. They've performed so well, the cars look great, and they sit in that weird place between the mainstream manufacturers and the sort of prestige German ones, don't they? But very comfortable with its own position, Volvo, recently. But to come out with this stuff now is bizarre. If Volvo sees itself as the moral arbiter of safety, it shouldn't make cars at all. A vehicle, if it travels at more than 3 miles an hour, can kill a human being. So any car's a killer. Why limiting to 112 miles an hour makes them any better than any other car maker, I don't know. But it just reminds me that car makers should sort of stay out of the moral game, because they're not really in a position to lead anyone on that front. And so, yeah, Volvo, I was going to buy a V90, but I'm not now. I don't want to be preached to by a car company. Yeah, I've got that off my chest. Here we go. Stuart Knight. I've just bought a 205 XS. Great car. One of my favourite ever cars. It's a great car. I can't get the hang of heel and toe, though. Any tips? Yeah, from memory, the brake pedal either sits too low to the throttle pedal. I think it does, doesn't it? So what you got to do is, and the throttle is very stiff on a 205 XS because it's got that Solex twin choke carb that needs an extra kick. So what you got to do is either work the foot further up the brake pedal. But you've got to learn that heel and toe isn't always the correct description for it. It could be toe and side of shoe. So find a shoe. And so, yeah, Volvo, I was going to buy a V90, but I'm not now. I don't want to be preached to by a car company. Yeah, I've got that off my chest. Here we go. Stuart Knight. I've just bought a 205 XS. What car are you tempted to buy, even though you know it would be a bad idea? Oh, what a great question. Every single one. All of the cars, all of the time. Right now, for some reason, because the weather's been great, we're all thinking about convertibles. What car are you tempted to buy, even though you know it would be a bad idea? Oh, what a great question. Every single one. All of the cars, all of the time. Right now, for some reason, because the weather's been great, we're all thinking about convertibles. I'd love an R129 Merc, an SL600 from that era. I'd love one, but it would be ruinous. And they came with biodegradable wiring looms. Think about that. Think about that concept for a moment. A biodegradable wiring loom. And they fall apart. But I could just see myself cruising around in one, you know, with my newfound locks. Faisal Ali London. It's a long question, this, but the long and short of it is this gentleman's built a beautiful FIA spec 911 with a 2.5 engine in it. So an old 911 from the early 70s. And he's worried about driving it on the road because it's got a front roll cage. And much as I don't want to be bearer of bad news, yes, I share your concerns. I won't drive cars with front roll cages in, basically, if I'm not wearing a crash helmet. Because I was once hosting a track day for Autocar, and there was a fireman there, and he saw someone driving a car around onto the road, leaving the circuit, I think, with a front roll cage. He stopped him and said, I've pulled so many people out of cars, bodies out of cars, and people that weren't wearing crash helmets with front cages, so be really careful. I mean, at the very least, when you're on the road, cover it in padding. Put loads of padding and foam around it. But I think it's a bad idea. Marie Hodes-Brown. Which car? Lamborghini Aventador or Lamborghini Veneno? I think I'd rather have a really bad dose of the clap than have a Veneno. So, yeah, it's an Aventador. Love you all. Bye-bye. Evening all. Brian Farquhar, 1981, asks, can I ask why you always in your car? Well, because for the last 7 weeks I've not been allowed to be in my car, and I found it comforting to be in my vehicle. When I was younger, before I could drive, well, before I was allowed to drive legally, I used to sit in my late father's car, and I would sit there and just change gear and learn and try and understand the timing of the clutch and the gear lever whilst I was sitting stationary. I'd do that for hours at a time when normal boys were meeting girls and doing stuff like that. It's just a sad commentary on my formative years. Shiv Pataloy. Thoughts on the new current Audi 8 versus the S-Class? It's interesting, isn't it? Almost all of the established hierarchies of cars have been broken down. Now, the Koreans have arrived and built some amazing hatchbacks that are as good as a Golf with 7-year warranties. You could argue that sports cars have been blown apart as well. But the one area of the car market where I just don't think you can argue there's a standout leader is the S-Class. I mean, it is just so much better than everything else because it's comfortable. A car of that type should foremost be comfortable. It should just be an amazingly supple riding vehicle, and the others don't seem to have it. So yeah, I'd still have an S-Class even though it's that much older. There's a new one coming soon. Buy me a juice, something like that. Last of the naturally aspirated supercars for you. Would it be an F50, a McLaren F1, or a Carrera GT? Okay, you'd have to have the F1 because it's worth so much money you could sell it and buy every single car you ever wanted. But if I had to keep it and drive it, and this is sacrilege, and you'll think I'm mad, it'd be an F50. I love an F50. The gearbox in that car, in fact, the combination of engine and gearbox is unlike anything else, even for me, beyond an F1 in terms of enjoyment. Dale Dancer. Did you have a definitive moment as a child when the penny dropped that you were in love with cars? For me, I was 7, and the owner of the local Indian restaurant let me sit in his Diablo. First of all, Dale, I suspect the proprietor of your local Indian takeaway was selling more than curry to afford the Diablo. For me, yes, I was sitting outside. Again, my dad had left me outside his office on a Saturday. I think I was about 5 or 6, and to shut me up, he went into the newsagent and gave me a copy of What Car magazine and said, "Look at that. You always talk about cars. That'll keep me quiet." And I just loved the data section at the back. I just loved learning what the 0 to 60 of a Vauxhall Cavalier GLS was. And yeah, ever since then, it's been a bit of a problem. Certainly academically, didn't manage to pass many exams because I was always buying car magazines. James Carr 98. If you could pick one manufacturer colour, what would it be? For me, it would be liquid blue. You've got to tell me which manufacturer it is. I don't know what liquid blue is. Is that a Ferrari or a McLaren or something? Irish Green by Porsche. Irish Green by Porsche. Sorry about the light issues. And have a really special weekend if you live in the UK. If you don't, have a special weekend anyway. Well, because it's a bank holiday in the UK, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, bye-bye. Evening, peeps. How are we? All good? Right, some questions. Where are we at? Either 11 toxic or ill toxic. Looking for an old school manual. B7 RS4 or E92 M3. Now, instinctively, I'm a BMW man. I like M cars. However, I had an E92 M3 manual, and it was a great car, but there was something not quite right about it. And the manual gearbox in it was a little bit lackluster. That's a good car magazine from the 80s word, isn't it? Lackluster. So for me, I'd go for B7 RS4 because you could get it as an estate and then it's just uber cool, isn't it? What a car. I had one of those as well. That was a story. Alex 1 Platt. 20k Boxster for a weekend toy. Would you go 987S or base 981? Well, the 987S's steering is hydraulic and miles better. However, the overall package of the 981 is a much nicer car. And for me, I know you don't see it while you're driving it, but it's a really beautiful car, that 981 Boxster. So I'd go 981. David _ Chroma. You have 24 hours to get in a car now and go anywhere. A, what car? B, where would you go? C, which passenger? Now, I'd love to tell you that I want to get in a 288 GTO and drive to the Futa Pass with Martin Brundle, who is my ultimate car chat hero. But right now, I'm missing some of my old routines, things I used to do. I've been wistful. So I'd like to drive from where I am in the southwest now to Anglesey Circuit, because that's a great drive up through Wales. I'd like to do it in just one of the old test cars, something like that can go quicker, but you can chat in. So let's say an F80 M3, something like that, okay? And I'd do it with, and I'm being soppy here, my old buddy Neil O'Carey, because Neil and I, whenever we travel anywhere, never fail to have a laugh, because he's a great man for talking utter bobbins and finding pointless things to argue about and doing top tens and all the stuff we love doing. So Neilo, yeah, let's go and do that soon. Gary Crook 3011, top 3 rally cars of all time. What changes every day, doesn't it? So today, whatever the wide-bodied Subaru from 98 was, the 22B looking thing, one of those, was it 97, 98, I think, one of those, amazing. Lancia 037 right now, and a big wing short wheelbase Quattro S1. Michael U. Kennett. What's the one car trend that caught on but you hoped it didn't, and what's the one that didn't but you wish it did? That's a good question. Very good question. There's a couple that have caught on that I wish didn't. I think the two of those are privacy glass in the UK, because we can't have it tinted all the way down, so the front windows remain clear. Therefore, when you see a car in silhouette, it's totally lopsided to me visually. I hate it. And the ultra low profile tyre on a 20-something inch rim is utter bollocks and ruins a car suspension, and then allows the car maker to fit dampers worth 18p because they can say, well, it doesn't ride anyway. So I wish they hadn't caught on. What's the thing that's not caught on that I wish had? Oh, think now, monkey. Oh, do you know those windscreen wipers that Mercedes make with the washer jets that are in the wiper blade? I thought they'd be on every car by now. Some have them, but I thought every car would have them because they're brilliant. But they've not, and maybe they're too expensive. So there you go. That's my answer to that. George North. He's a rugby player, Welsh rugby player. Big lad. Don't mess with him. Thoughts on making cars look like something they're not? In other words, taking a non-GTI and making it look like a GTI. And in his case, taking a 94 C2 and making it look like an RS. He says I was all for it, but now I'm on the fence. What I will say is this: we've probably all done it, and once we've completed it, we've enjoyed it for a short period of time, and then subsequently have gone, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And there's probably a parable of why you shouldn't do it wrapped up in that anecdote. I think adding bits is fine, but I think a total pastiche and a fake is a bit silly. I will add one caveat, and that is I like a bit of inverse snobbery. So if you've got an RS6 and you nip a TDI badge on it or something like that, I quite like that. But yeah, be proud of what it is. I once put Pepper Pot 205 GTO 1.6 wheels on my XS. It was my holy grail of doing something to the car, and it totally shagged the ride and handling. Wish I hadn't. Stay well, chaps and chapesses. Afternoon all. Yeah, change of plan here. It's been the first day back with a test car. It's been wonderful. I thought I'd record a little whiskey file now with the new 992 Turbo S in the background. That's the coupe, and I'm in the cab. Here we go. Nath Worrell. Which car from your past taught you the most about car control? I think the car that taught me most about car control was probably my 306 XSI, actually. The 205s I had were just a bit evil, but the 306 had that amazing passive rear steer, so you could feel the car move around, and it made me understand that basically the front-wheel drive car, if you pin the throttle, it sorts you out. In terms of rear-wheel drive, it's probably my least, but the less said about that, the better. Loud 996, what's your favourite Q car? E28 M5 perhaps is my favourite, or is the one that I'm most attached to. However, there's one car that I've run that was so Q, no one got it. Radar, it was a delicious toy to go and bake fast off with. Wazza fella? I can't remember my writing. With the release of the new Targa, what are your thoughts? They rarely figure in the media. They do, don't they? They rarely figure. They're a bit ignored. Radar, it was a delicious toy to go and bake fast off with. Wazza fella? I can't remember my writing. With the release of the new Targa, what are your thoughts? They rarely figure in the media. They do, don't they? They rarely figure. They're a bit ignored. In the past, it was a slightly laughable thing for me. With the sort of retractable glass thing, it was a very heavy car that was based on a convertible, so it looked like it was a coupe, but it wasn't, and it wasn't very rigid. But the new one, and the 991 Targa I think is gorgeous, the new one is gorgeous. It might be the next 911 I buy. I just think they're wonderful, wonderful looking cars. I know some people don't like them, but I think they're great. Jen Patterson 7796. Have you ever tried Japanese whiskey? There's a dent on one of my shins from Nika from the barrel. That's all I'll say. Now, just to wind up here, I've had a day in this thing. It's an absolute weapon, this 992 Turbo S cab. It's a lot of money, but it's pretty much faultless. I mean, it's got 4 seats, even though the 2 ones in the back are small. It goes like stink. There's no real scuttle movement. You have no sense that it's a convertible when the roof's down in terms of the way the chassis is flexing. And it's a remarkable piece of engineering, I have to say. Been a good day out. And lovely to get back out and drive a car. I feel really privileged, and I hope all of you can have a chance to drive soon as well, because really helped me up top as well. Just to get out, sunshine, day with my boys behind the camera, he's been great. So, yeah, go well. Evening all, how are we? 2 words for you, Clubber Lang. And a big shout out to Alcoholics who gave me this beautiful t-shirt, which is a schematic from Auto Delta from, I presume, the GTA days. Isn't it gorgeous? Right, some questions. If I can find them. Here we go. Where are we at? Here we go. Ishan Mirash. Best in-car sound system you've ever heard? Well, I'm a name man, as you know, a name man through and through. But the Bentley stuff's never quite done it for me. The best I've heard, there's 2 standouts. The Burmester in the current S-Class Coupe that I had, the S63, that was just outrageously brilliant. And then also there was a Meridian system in that XJ Supersport that I managed to cut off from the previous video. That was so good. I used to have it around the back of my shed and listen to it like it was a hi-fi. Classic mini pub. What's your view on sticking on a bit of plastic to a car rather than finishing the shell? For example, the arches on the new John Cooper Works GP. Well, I think a car at that price point, it's absolutely fair enough. But I think the one that really undid it for me is the new GTA. When I saw those arches were just bits of plastic, I was like, oh, come on. If BMW can put a metal arch on a 50, 60 grand M3, you've lost the plot. But there's one car that undoes all this, and that is the 993 GT2 with its riveted on bits of plastic. Go and have a look at one of those. Wow, they look great. The Real Smithereens. Which journalist is the best driver? Difficult, because people like Martin Brundle are now journalists, and he's a pretty handy driver. So, yes, it is hot in here, by the way. Dickie Meaden's a fantastic driver, great journalist. The original and best for me, though, there's two. Paul Frere, who's no longer with us. He entered Formula One races, and he was a genuine journalist. What a talent. And Mark Hales. Mark Hales was my hero as a kid. He's just a great driver and journalist. So those are the names, probably. There's some other good ones that will be pissed off at me for not mentioning them. And, yeah, I think... oh, that was my battery thing going off. I think those are the names I'd like to mention. Scott Sheldon. Is Church at Thruxton flat? Before he entered a TVR Tuscan race there once, we told Colin Goodwin that it was. And he texted me saying, Church is not flat, after he'd had a full code brown. It was flat for me in a Renault 5 non-turbo once. 55 Courier 805. Would you buy a 512 TR now and drive it? Do you think it will increase in value? I've got one, pal. It hasn't increased in value. Well, it has. In fact, I bought it so long ago. I think I paid 50 grand for it. And it shot up during the silly times. And I think it was worth 170,000 at one point. And now it's probably worth about 40,000. It's a full journey, the full cycle I've been through. I love driving it. It's a fantastic motor car. I won't sell it, I don't think, unless something amazing opportunity comes along. I just think it's the most wonderful expression of what a supercar should be. Manual gearbox, 3 pedals, just what a thing. Now, little tip for you. If you're having a burger this weekend, go and get a packet of that 4-cheese risotto that comes in a packet. Preferably an Italian brand, they're normally better. And cook that up and just allow the rice to swell a bit beyond what you normally would. So don't have it with a bite in it. Don't go al dente, let it swell. And then put that on top of the burger. It's a great way. It's a great cheese delivery device. Don't tell me how I found out. Have a great weekend. Love you lots. Afternoon all, you join me for the interior of the 1986 BMW M5 E28. Look at this. Even the electric headrests still work. What a joyous machine she is. Some questions. George Bakakis. With Jag having ruined the front of the F-Type with its facelift, what do you think was the worst or best facelift in history? There were some plurals in there as well. Good question. 997 Gen 2 I thought was a really neat facelift. It's also, your opinion changes over time, doesn't it? The R230 SL Mercedes, that was the 2002 to 2012 car. When they facelifted it in 08, I thought they wrecked the flipping thing. But now looking back, I think it looks quite good. So my opinion's changed. The Bangle 7 Series facelift was another very successful one. Subaru did some hideous things to the Impreza over time. But what I am sure of is that your opinions change on these things. So I'm not fixed about them. There you go. Probably not what you wanted to hear, George. E. Downey. Is €35,000 too much to pay for a Mark II Focus RS? Yes, it is. Luke Cassidy, R53. Car Throttle posted this question, and I'd love to hear your opinion. The worst supercar of all time? Good question. Well, by definition, objectively, all supercars are rubbish because they don't do the job of being a car as well as a normal car because they're uncomfortable, you can't see out of them, they've got no fuel range normally. So they're trinkets, aren't they? So almost all of them are terrible. I would say the most disappointing one I drove when it was new was the 575 Maranello that was just nothing like as good as the 550 before it, but they fixed it with the Maranello, the Fiorano handling kit and the manual gearbox that you could get for it. So they did try and fix it, but it was a bucket of you-know-what. First out the box, it was terrible. The Adonis was the most unfinished supercar I've ever driven. I think they only made a couple in the end. It was a rebodied Bugatti EB110 out of the same factory. Fantastic, weird Italian story. and it was so unfinished that at 110 miles an hour the windscreen came in, which wasn't great. The XJ220 on hard rubber in the wet was as close to undrivable as any car I've ever driven. There's some examples for you. Neil Moyes: what streaming service do you use for your hi-fi? Or are you old school and use physical media? I like that phrase. I use Tidal for the high-res lossless files, which I think are really good. And yes, I've got loads of CDs. And I don't have any vinyl, which I would quite like to get into, I have to say. Now, many people have asked about the 4 Series, what I think about the 4 Series. I thought the concept was punchy, but fundamentally, I like the idea of BMW going for a more vertical kidney that's like that than going ever wider, because sooner or later it was going to be wider than the actual car itself. But it's still challenging looking. What I will say in BMW's defence is sometimes car companies have to just make a statement to then push a new direction to design, and Bangle was brilliant at that. So I'm going to give them a chance. And I don't think it looks as bad as I thought it was going to look. And I know people don't agree with me. It's not pretty, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, which is damning with faint praise, isn't it? Sorry these were late. I've just been, yeah, that's life at the moment, isn't it? Stay well. Hello all. Sorry about yesterday. It involved Glenn Farkless in the M2. What I'm learning is that every car has an optimum camera position point, and the M2 likes it low down because there's nothing really on the dashboard to balance it on. It's amazing what you learn, isn't it? Some questions. Marcus Voyerman. It's a long question. Which car was not disappointing, which you thought it would be, and which has exceeded expectations? Good question. The most disappointing car dynamically I've ever driven that was new was probably the original Clio V6, because we'd read so much about it and TWR were involved in developing it, and then within about a mile of driving it down a French D road I realised it was pretty dangerous, not finished, and probably wouldn't see which way a Clio 172 had gone, and which has exceeded expectations. Oh, the other one that was disappointing was the original E65 series. I remember being given a 530D and it just didn't ride because it had run flat tyres and the interior looked shite. So that was terrible. Exceeded. I'll tell you what. Subaru made a Legacy 2.5 in 1998. The most dull looking car ever, because all you wanted with Subarus was turbos and Imprezas. And I was given this thing to drive back from Salisbury Plain after a photo shoot, and it was sublime. It was a lovely road car. No one gave a monkeys about them. But in my head, it was a 1-star car. By the time I got back to the office, it was a 6-star car. It was wonderful. Ravi Bara. How do you keep your cars clean? I might ask someone else to clean them for me. Other than that, I don't really. They're all in good mechanical condition, but I just don't have an interest in clean cars. I mean, look at the state of them. It would look ridiculous. It would be oxymoronic to have a mint car and then this get out of it, wouldn't it? Will's EZ3 or Will's Z3. M2 Akrapovich, why? So this chap doesn't understand why people like me put Acras on our cars. I've just put one on my M2 Comp. And I wrote a cheque for it, quite a large one. Everyone thinks that everything's for free. It's not always. Because I love the sound of it. I like the switchable nature of it. They breathe better, so you do get a bit more power. And if you want to play with the engine later on, then you can get more power. My 1M has a full Acra on it, and that's really helped get more power. It probably has over 400 now. That's a big step on the standard car. I like the quality of it. I like the boxes they come in. I like what the company stands for. I think I just have an Akrapovich tax on my life, really. I'm quite happy to pay it because I love the products. So, yeah, you do it because you love it. There's no necessity. Pooh Bar DC2. My wife is looking for a car to replace her 991 C4S, which she dailies. Big ups to your wife. Sounds like a fine lady. New Cayman GTS 4.0 or an AMG GTS year-old. Easy choice, get the Cayman. That Cayman GTS is one of the sweetest things I've driven in a long, long time, and I think in the future will be regarded as something very special. Craig Iwanchuk, I hope so, IWANCZ UK, so it could be Iwanch UK. Which Ferrari GTO since the 250 would you say stands close or most of the way to being true to GTO status? Good question. Well, there isn't anything really that stands up to a 250 GTO. But there's one for me that absolutely is the car, and that's the 288. I just love a 288 GTO. I think it's a gorgeous thing. It's beautiful, it's exciting to drive, a bit lost compared to the F40 dynamically, according to some people, but not the one I last drove. I know it wasn't a racing car, but it was conceived within Group B regulations, so it has that, it does meet that criterion. But I don't think the 599 really stacks up. It's a great car, but it's not a GTO, it's not a racing car, it doesn't offer any of that. So yeah, 288 for me. I wonder if they call the 812 a GTO. They might well do. You could argue that the F12 TDF is probably worthy of a GTO badge as well. There you go. Yeah, have a nice weekend. I fear that the weather in the UK has unnaturally supported all of our mental conditions and made us feel very happy. Now the weather's changed a bit, it's not quite so easy. Another thing I found is quite good. Turn off all your news feeds for a bit. Just the madness of the world, block it out for a while. And read car magazines or do nice things. Cheers. Greetings all. A few questions for you. Dave Richmond 1. 458 FNE, 911 hull, P100V. These are number plates that are well known because they're put on famous manufacturer-owned vehicles in the UK. They're press car vehicles. You've driven them all. You can keep one, complete with the plate. Which one do you have? It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think the one that we all feel is the most special with journalists is probably 911 Hull, because I've driven so many 911 Hulls. XLG was special, the Porsche one again. The most special Porsche one for me is probably HBY, known as Hebe, which is a 3.8 RS 997. I love that. Which one would I have? I'd probably have one car, which is owned by Ford. You used to put it on stuff like Granadas. It's such a cool number plate, one car. Go away, fly. So yeah, maybe I'd have one car. Jamie R. Queen 10. Best Alpina of the last 20 years. That's a question. They had a slightly bad period, I think, when they were doing the E65 series. They got that all wrong. But I think the car that best exemplified everything about Alpina was probably the B10 V8 and the V8S and the E39 shape. They were just fantastic cars because they offered something the M car didn't. They were complementary. Now they seem to be still crowded in the same space because M cars have become a bit more comfortable and Alpinas have got a bit more sporting. But Alpina is on form again now. I love their cars. But yeah, or maybe the last shape B3 Touring that I drove. That was a great car as well. Trump O'Shea. I've got a new Civic Type R. I love it. But I've got a 4-year-old. Oh, well done. 4 years ago. Should I have an RS4 and M3? I'm a BMW man, but when it comes to the practicalities of having a child and the bikes and other crap, sundry crap that you'll need to carry around, needs to be in estate cars. It needs to be an RS4, but you shouldn't buy one without first driving a C63S estate. Gary Ligo. I have an Z350 Sport V6. Would you switch to a Cayman GT4 or a Spider? Fundamentally, yes, because the engines are so much better. There's another thing to enjoy. But remember this. There's something about a Lotus and the way it goes down a road and the way that it steers and the way that its controls feel that you will lose in the Porsche. They will feel big and numb immediately afterwards, but you will get used to that. But if you love that sort of dainty, touchy-feely stuff, maybe you don't swap. Polar Gasser. Top 5 upgrades for a stock car. That's a good question. See, some of the stuff I do isn't in the obvious areas. I'd always go chassis before I went engine, normally. I quite like putting an exhaust on the car, just because a bit more sound and you release a bit more power. But it depends whether you're talking about a car that's turbocharged, normally aspirated. But let's assume it's a normally aspirated car. So I might change the exhaust. I'd see if there was a better suspension solution, because normally stock cars have very cheap dampers, so some dampers. Other little things I do are a bit weird. I would have a look at changing speakers, because I love having as good a hi-fi as possible. I'd also, and I do this quite a lot, I put those very expensive Bosch windscreen wipers blades on my cars, because I just think they're brilliant. And new wiper blades on a car are just magic. That's 4. And then the obvious one, which is the most important of all, tyres. And right now Michelin's ahead of the game. I just put Pilot Sport 4S on anything because it gives you so much more performance. Oliver Davis Holmes. Sounds like a company, not a person. GTC4 Lusso. A low mileage V8 or spend a little more for a 15,000 mile V12. I had an FF, which was the one before that. I think if you're after the V12 experience, you've got to spend the extra and go for the Big Daddy, because I think it really is part of what the dream that you want to live. But those V8s do look very tempting, and they're rear-wheel drive as well, so you can go and skid them about. But once you've heard that V12, yeah, you've got to have some of that. You've got to have some of that. Stay well, everyone, and yeah, just ignore the news. Cheers. Hello all. Bit of a jaunty angle today. I'm struggling to get the thing to sit upright in this particular vehicle. Questions. Vehicle face-off. Have you ever driven a Mercedes CLK GTR or a DTM? No, neither. Got very close to driving a GTR once. Exciting. That's a really special car. Everyone goes on about the McLaren F1 being the only car of the 90s that was a spectacular supercar standalone. But I think the engineering in that car is remarkable. People didn't get access to them. And the DTM, no. A fact that Mr. J. Button, Esquire, Formula 1 World Champion, loves reminding me of. So, Jensen, yes, I've not driven a DTM. Marcu Lepisto, just bought a Z4M Roadster. Why do you think it's underappreciated? Good question, that. I think it's a classic case of a car that when it was new didn't quite stack up. The chassis was maxed out, handling all that power from that fantastic engine. And also, I think there were so many great engines around at that time, we didn't appreciate that we were soon going to lose them and get all this four-cylinder shite come along. So, yes, it's now just seems to serve as a wonderful place for that engine to sit. The roof goes down, didn't cost you too much money. You're thinking, why wasn't this brilliant? Or why didn't people think it was brilliant when it was new? Well, it was probably 50 grand when spec'd and didn't offer that much value. Funny how things change, isn't it, over time? Kyle 3D, must mean he's three-dimensional. What's the best OEM sports seat? I'm a big fan of the 918 bucket. Well, that's ironic because I'm sitting in one at the moment. It's a good seat, but I don't think it's the best I've had. So there are probably three standouts for me. There was a very winged bucket seat that came in all the Club Sport 996 GT3s. That was a sensational seat. It just fitted me. Again, this is about personal taste, isn't it? I'm not a normal shape. I'm a very, very small human being. As you can see, my head actually sits below the top of the seat in this. So from behind, it looks like it's driving itself. But the two standouts for me are, one, the sports seat in the G-Series Carreras. So an 89 or 88 Club Sport that I had. It was a normal cloth seat with these massive side bolsters. Fundamentally, I want to be pinched in the midriff and I want my legs to be free. Too many seats pinch your legs and pinch your shoulders. All this shoulder crap that came from DTM, don't need it. And the other one for me was the first C63 Mercedes had these seats with these enormous side bolsters. It was like being hugged every time you drove. I absolutely love them. H4 ERX. My mate has a 600 LT and I have a Lamborghini Performante. Which is better and why? I think your mate's done better there. Residually, he might not have done. 600s appear to be losing value quite quickly. But what a car a 600 LT is. It is arguably the most complete of that type of car. It's remarkable what it can do, the way it drives, the way it goes down a road, the way it'll attack a track. It's supple, yet it's well supported. It's monumentally fast. It's got that Lotus-like sense of connection for the driver. I'm afraid to say the only thing your Lamborghini's got over it is that remarkable V10 engine that you get to enjoy, which is just so much more special than the turbocharged V8 in the McLaren. But apart from the donk, the McLaren has it licked. A shorter one tonight. The sun's back out. Go out and enjoy the sunshine if you can. Bye-bye.
6. Right, simple. If you want an object to love because it's historically significant and to use now and again, then the 205. If you want to drive it a load more, get the 306. That thing is wonderful. Harry Moo. My grandfather built Liddon Hill Circuit. What's your top 5 race circuits in the UK? Get rid of that fly. Go away. Oh, good hit. Well, thank you to your grandfather for building Liddon Hill. It's the home of Rallycross. Top 5 circuits. Okay, I'm going to miss out Cadwell because I love driving it. But for me, I don't like racing on it much because it's too tight unless you're in something really small. So I love Cadwell. I'd go Alton Park, Donington, Silverstone, Brands Hatch Long, And do you know what? Even though I've not raced there, and it totally contradicts the reasons why I said I was leaving Cadwell Park off, I took going to say Anglesey, because I just love being at Anglesey. I could change that list every day of the week, by the way. Right, I go back to work tomorrow for the first time in 3 months, which is going to be a shock to the system, but I'm really pleased that I get to go and see my large northern mates. And it means I won't be doing this very often. So I will do it again, and I hope it's answered some of my critics who said I didn't engage with people. I've really enjoyed it. It's helped me an awful lot to feel like I've stayed in contact with the outside world. But I will do some more. But until then, stay well and enjoy your motoring, enjoy your whiskey. And I promise this isn't the last one, but they're not going to happen as frequently as perhaps they have been. Contact with the outside world. But I will do some more. But until then, stay well and enjoy your motoring, enjoy your whiskey. And I promise this isn't the last one, but they're not going to happen as frequently as perhaps they have been.